conversation. Here we have a new candidate profile. It's Mr. John Schattke. He's jumping into the race because he's felt like he needs to change the debate, change the tone. How would you frame it, sir?
Well, there was way too much discussion of gimmies, if you ask me. Um, I don't feel that's what transhumanism is about. Transhumanism is about promoting the science and technology of bringing people to be better people, right? And yeah, it's great to talk about, how to help people now. But when we get down to it, the technology uh, that adds to the quality of life at lower cost is what has given us the best advances, and we need to bring that ability to advance into all facets of how to take care of ourselves, and that's being stymied right now. And government, under the current regime, is part of that stymieing. I mean, you look at what the FDA does and the incentives for the FDA administrators are completely negative for advancement, right? They have an incentive to hide away uh, everything until they are perfectly sure, whereas the incentive for advancement is going to be from trying everything you can possible, especially among those who are most threatened, right?
That's absolutely correct. So we'll run down your list of questions. So you're saying here with the FDA that you're worried that it's a bureaucratic regime that's geared towards growing its having bureaucratic growth, and disincentivizing innovation because of litigious notions, because it's worried about the litigious aspects. So that's interesting. So discuss your background and why you think it would render you as effective president of the United States.
Well, I'm an engineer and a son of an engineer, and I've got 20 years of experience as a computer programmer, and now I'm doing nuclear engineering. Large, complex cost-benefit analysis problems are what I do. And if there's anything that's a large, complex cost-benefit analysis problem, it's the federal government. I mean, you've got a lot of things where you're looking at a lot of competing interests, and you have to thread between them in order to find a solution that satisfies everybody. And there's a lot of things that the federal government, I think, are against the Constitution as written, and I would quickly put an end to. And that's the prerogative of the president. A lot of the things that are being done by the government are being done under the aegis of the regulatory regime. The actual law enabling it is usually a vague thing, and the regulations are the province of the president. If the president makes a change to or his authorized representatives make a change to a regulation, there is a law that says the Congress can vote to not allow that change, right? But it's a negative thing. They have to take action to stop it, okay? And that's so it's a lot easier to get rid of a regulation than it is to get rid of a law. And so I think I can reduce the size of government significantly and reduce the cost and significantly by doing that. When you talk about the future, right, and growth and economic growth, I think the Cato Institute did a study some years back that said that if we had maintained just the amount of regulation we had in the 1950s, we would have a GDP 3 times what it is now. Okay? That would be 45 trillion, with everybody earning 3 times as much. And, everybody having 3 times as much stuff to use. We've got a world where the entire GDP is only 70 trillion. If America was 30 trillion more, that's almost a 50% more GDP for the whole world. Everybody in the world would be better off, okay? Because that GDP would have been spent throughout the world on raw materials, on manufactured goods out of China or other countries that are doing our manufacturing for us because we shipped it over there, lock, stock, and barrel in the 90s. So I think part of setting free our immortality has to be setting free our method of production of things, right? You can't live for long ever, or even very long, if a 100-degree day comes and you're old and that kills you, right? Because you don't have air conditioning. So it's a very real problem. And there are more people that die to adverse weather even now than, to anything else. I mean, the number one killer really in the world is malaria, which is a mosquito caused by mosquitoes in Africa. And the second most is weather. And, and then you get into the massive diseases, heart disease, cancer, things like that. And those diseases we are making progress on, but because there's this FDA regime, new drugs coming out, and America still, even with the FDA, by and large, comes out with the most drugs in the world. We are the innovation capital of the world in pharmaceuticals. And we need to set that freer by reducing the burden of the FDA. So I think that's where I'm coming from. I think I can free vast strides in health and well-being that way.
Interesting. So so there's an overburdened regulatory process around the FDA, and you, as president, would take some sort of executive action and/or Congress and/or Senate action, get these guys to work together to free up some of that regulation, a very Ronald Reagan-esque type campaign footing.
Well, I grew up in the Reagan years, so
What do you?
I very well.
What do you consider to be the most important aspects of transhumanism and the kinds of impacts it should have upon the world?
Well, transhumanism is about expanding the ability of the human of humanity, right? We've the ability to interface with machines will bring really great strides in assisting our limited faculties for memory and for data acquisition. The ability to extend our lives will mean we get just a lot more effective years out of our best and brightest. You know, imagine if Mozart had access to modern medicine. He wouldn't have died at 36. And can you imagine the symphonies that would have come out of another 30 years of Mozart? Can you imagine if Feynman had another 2 decades of clear thinking to work on quantum electrodynamics? The possibilities are of extending the reach of our genius are wonderful, and that, I think, the most important part of transhumanism is extending our genius to to immortality, really.
Yeah. What are the areas of the U.S. Transhumanist Party platform that you identify with the most strongly?
Well, there are a lot of areas of the platform that are very libertarian and in wording and focus, and those are near and dear to my heart. I've become a voluntarist, and I believe everything should be done voluntarily. Not like income tax is voluntary, but truly, yes, I think this will help me. I'm going to do this, and no force or coercion anywhere in the process.
Yeah. So, what are, in your view, some of the major problems in contemporary American society? Part 1, and how can transhumanism aid in resolving those problems? Part 2. So,
Well,
part 1, what problems are there in American contemporary society?
We've nearly we've had a race war nearly completely stirred up now. It's crazy. And it's extending into heated name calling and violence between people who are neighbors and friends and colleagues, and that's a really bad place to be in. Every single racial group in America has contributed to what America is and provided genius. Every single ethnic group has contributed to the melting pot that is America and helped it to become the greatest country on earth. And we need to cooperate and make use of each person's unique genius that they have. And if people aren't geniuses, well, they can still, fix a car or there's a lot of other work to do besides just genius work.
And part 2, how can transhumanism aid in resolving these problems?
Well, I think it's fairly obvious. When we recognize how fleeting um, the world, the the uh, let me restart that. uh, the, when we reduce the amount of um, strife from the amount of jealousy, right? Right now, there is really no reason for somebody who has, you know, a comfortable home that's air conditioned and livable to every day of the year and comfortable all the time, and who has access to all the modern technological gadgetry you want, a cell phone, a large flat screen TV, computer at home, and all of this, and all the food they can conceivably consume. Uh, why should that person be and has a car and has you know all of this? Why should they be jealous of somebody because they have a bigger car, a bigger home, a bigger TV, a bigger yeah, why should somebody be worried about the 1% living with their hard-earned stuff? They're just doing the same thing you're doing, living with your hard-earned stuff in your bungalow. Um, and they're, you know, just a guy living in that mansion. I've been there, lived in the mansions. It's not. You're the same. You're not different. Those people aren't different.
In your
So
view,
there's no. You know,
sorry.
um, so when we get to living a long time, that perspective on the difference will be more likely to be a part of people's life. And I think transhumanism, by pointing out how similar we are, uh, rather than how different, and offering on a path to uh, the immortality and the comfortable life, will need make it needless to have the conflict. And this goes for both internal conflict in America and worldwide. And, you know, the conflict with the third world and the jealousy they feel uh, disappearing as they get to be fully developed nations. I mean, if you look at South Korea, does a South Korean care that an American earns, 50% more than them? No. They're happy. They're living a good life. Do the Poles worry about Americans? No. They're happy. They're living a good life. But, under communism, we're not living a good life. So I think that's what transhumanism can offer. We transcend the human condition of poverty just as surely as we transcend the human condition of death by technology. And we've done a good job so far. I mean, technology in the last 2 decades has dropped worldwide poverty from nearly 3 billion to close to 500 million. And so the number of people who are truly destitute is dwindling and will so soon go away. And that is because of technology. And make no mistake about that.
In your view, what aspects of contemporary American politics works well and what aspects are broken and or malfunctioning?
Well, I actually think uh, the political tool of the people's plebiscite, uh, which they call different things, ballot measures or whatever, uh, where people get to set a law into being at the state levels just by getting enough signatures on a petition and then having a vote on it. I think that's a healthy thing. I think that's one of the best ways of making binding laws. If you're going to make and have any way of making them, everybody should get it, right? What doesn't work is the insanely partisan, completely uncontrolled politics that is most evident in the last 5 years or so at the federal level. It is just gotten completely crazy. You got people who break campaign promises in order to vote with their party, and that's not American. We had a president, John Tyler, who literally, he took over because he was the vice president and the president. But when he became president, he was, he did things according to his conscience, and his party literally threw him out and destroyed it in the process. The Whigs are no longer, right? But this party kicked him out of the party because he was principled instead of instead of following the party line and signing the party line bills. So that's an American way of doing things. And what we've gotten to in the last years is dirty politics. It's crummy behavior. It's evil.
If elected,
they protect people who are, have obviously done something against the law, and in the name of partisan, politics, and they, try to frame people who done nothing against the law in the name of party politics. It's wrong. Anyway.
if elected president, what policy measures would you pursue?
Well, peace from the day. Every American military person in the field would be brought immediately back to base, and the vast majority of foreign bases, I would offer to sell to more power at, with all the equipment, and get our people home. There's no reason for our people to be defending foreign soil and waste American blood and causing American among the world to drop because of the violence that we are doing to other people in the name of freedom or building peace or the drug war. I don't care what. It doesn't matter unless we are specifically responding to a specific threat, our people don't belong there. And that is one thing the president has absolute control over, 100% from day one.
Absolutely. If elected president, what changes would you hope to achieve during your first term?
Well, I would hope to privatize a number of federal agencies. There is no reason for it, the FCC to be a federal agency, for instance. That it doesn't make any sense for the FDA to be a federal agency. That can be privatized. We can privatize the Department of Transportation, and all of these things. We can make a citizen-owned, voluntary donation system where, if people believe that roads need to be built by, coordinated on the federal level, well, then they can coordinate and contribute to the National Department of Transportation. Wise, that they will continue to pay their state taxes, and the states will continue to keep the roads up, and with lower taxes at the federal level, in order from the privatization, it would free up that sort of thing. There's a lot of the Department of Education could be treated the same way. People who voluntarily contribute to education will be free to do so. People who, they may not. There will be people who will donate their life savings when they die to the education, I'm sure, because they believe strongly in helping people to learn the basics of life. And but I don't think that we should be taxing the poorest half of the country, because that's where the majority of the taxes come from, in order to pay for college educations for the top 20%. It doesn't make any sense.
What are your thoughts on the U.S. Constitution and its relevance and implications in the transhuman era? And what are transhuman and the current U.S. Constitution compatible?
Transhumanism is definitely compatible with the Constitution. The only change I think that would need to be made would be to define sentience and offer citizenship of sentience. That'll happen as we uplift animals like chimpanzees in order to be sapient at the level where they have self-awareness and awareness of the future at a significant level. The U.S. Constitution is perhaps the strongest protector of freedom in the world as government constitutions go. I believe that the U.S. Constitution had been strictly interpreted from the beginning and hadn't been usurped by people like Kennedy and Wilson, we would have, and FR, that we would have had a much happier and happier society and much more prosperous.
A transhumanist campaign for president is primarily an educational endeavor. What are the key insights about which you would like to educate the public during your campaign? How would you like to educate them?
Well, I'd like to show them where the current government is failing them personally in achieving uh, things they want, a prosperous life, a long life, uh, the ability to be who they want in the way that they want. Uh, and everybody wants those things, right? There's nobody who doesn't want to be who they are and uh, to be prosperous and to live a long life. Those nobody wants. And I think that that's something that the political landscape of us against them, of um, for foreign domination and making America the greatest in the world isn't what we're about. America is about freedom. If we're free and somebody else is greater, who cares? We'll be us. So I think transhuman has can give that inclusivity and that hope and free people's immortality. Hey, look at that, getting my catchphrase in there.
Yeah. Given that the president would need to act on behalf of the interests of the entire population with regard to members of the public who are either not transhumanists or maybe implicit transhumanists, what would make you effective candidate to appeal to them and represent their interests?
I think everybody sees places where the government infringes on their life, and would like it to stop. And I think if I bring freedom and that's there, and like I said, bring the message of prosperity and to everyone, and there's nobody who doesn't want to be prosperous. And I think that people want to live on the dole. I think people want to do something constructive with their time. I don't think it will make work. Look at the dismal record of the WPA of the 1930s. People didn't want to make work. They wanted actual things to do that were useful. And so I think if we need to free the American entrepreneur, we need to free the American to for people. How many people are working at Starbucks now because they made and hundreds of other upscale coffee shops that sell they can sell coffee at a price that can afford to have a stove there, and because when I was growing up, Dunkin' Donuts was it, and that was a 50-cent cup of coffee and a 20-cent donut, and the guy behind the counter you knew made minimum wage, and now you've got these Starbucks with a $1 grande mocha latte with skim milk or whatever, and but it pays for an awful lot of Starbucks stores to be open, an awful lot of people working at a decent job where they can make a halfway decent wage and make some tips, and those people are employed now because some up in Seattle said, I want this good coffee that I make at home to everybody. And he's been doing his cappuccino, and And he went out and said, let's serve everybody cappuccino. And sure enough, caught on. Even those little geniuses are, something to value. And it doesn't have to be, a Bill Gates creating, uh, you know, MS-DOS and getting a sweetheart deal from IBM because of his dad, or actually stealing CPM and making it MS-DOS. But anyway, but he made it into a billion-dollar company, and at one point I think it was to $150 billion valuation or something during the com and that's one level of genius. But the little guys, the little entrepreneurs are where the vast majority of job growth happens.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much. I would talk to you more, but the internet is not the best, and so it's making the conversation really hard. So I think we'll schedule another one, and we'll have a proper talk about your other stuff. Your nuclear research sounds very interesting. Your big ideas, approaching from a big complex systems analysis. So that's very good. Very libertarian, volatilist in forms of wiping out massive regulations, getting rid of the FDA. You seem pretty adamant about that. We talked a bit about privatizing certain departments. There's a question in there. Civic governance you said basically democratize it, but is the government supposed to be of the people, by the people, especially in the United States anyway? So there's a talking point in there, but I know that's libertarian rhetoric that runs around. So that's very good. And unleashing the American economy from the ground up. I would like to talk to you about the fact that Donald Trump seems to be undoing a lot of regulations now. So how are you going to battle against that on the right? But we'll get some better internet, and we'll have all those discussions at another point. But thank you very much for coming on Detonation.
Yeah, it looks like we've got a bit of a lag.
yeah, it's making it very hard. But
you never know where the trans-Pacific links are gonna, be tough or not.
Yeah, waiting for that Starlink, Elon Musk Starlink. These old cables underneath the ocean are getting a bit old-fashioned.
Yeah. He's got a dream for that, and it should be anything to pan out. We've seen GPS go from the original 20 satellites to the network we have now, and it's great.
Absolutely, yeah, and So, and the proliferation of technology, people like yourself need to keep up over this because, it's becoming the big topic of the day. So thank you so much for coming on Detonation, and we'll good luck in your campaign as well.
I'll keep trying to make it something everybody can get behind.
Absolutely. All right. Look forward to having you on again. See you later.